we are the Black Student Alliance of Edgewood High School. My name is Ann. I'm the vice president, and I'll go around and introduce our members.
I'm Jeremiah. I'm a senior.
I'm B. Wayne. I'm a senior.
Bro Timmy, football senior.
Nia Webb, senior.
Aman Tripathi, senior.
So today we are going to be discussing racial injustices against athletes and the solutions that we can have. So first we are going to talk about the few responses that we got from our students and how they are microaggressions and why the racism is wrong. And if you do not know, a microaggression is an indirect or subtle racism towards a minority group. Now our members are going to read responses that we've gotten from our athletes.
All right, the first response we have is by a soccer player at our school, and they said, I heard a couple of my friends being called an N-word on the field during the soccer game. So what do you guys think about that?
So I think there's a lot of issues just blatantly about the fact that we're in a system that allows this sort of stuff to be said without any sort of repercussions. And I think the fact that this happened and we never heard about it is enough of an issue in of itself. There's not enough coverage of the fact that this is happening and not enough repercussions for those who are doing it. And I think there's a problem in that of itself.
For sure. And I don't think this is like just in microaggressions. It's a direct aggression, because that word has a lot of history behind it as well, because it's been extensively used against the Black community as a marginalized group. So to use that word to specifically target that individual or group of soccer players, it has a lot of aggressive intention behind it.
Yeah, and I know this word historically has been meant to like demean people, especially if they're like succeeding. It's meant to bring them back down from that success. So if the players were doing particularly well and they were like jealous of how good they were doing, they might be using that word to bring them down, basically.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Okay, next one.
So this is from a EHS football manager. On September 3rd, a group of girls walked by the football team and said, we're going to beat them, and they're just a bunch of N-words.
I think the issue with this is that how easily people are able to just get away with it. We're kind of stuck in a system that allows it to be this clear, just this blatantly spoken, and nothing is happening about it. And the fact that we are in a place where, we're a predominantly minority-led school, so the stereotype is already there. And the people that are in charge are supposed to be making sure that we are given equal representation and, in a sense, an equal playing field. And I feel like allowing these sort of racial slurs, allowing these discriminatory actions to happen, is just taking away from that.
Also, looking at the word choice of what these girls said, they said they're just. So to use that word to diminish somebody as a person and make it seem as if they're lower than anybody else is absolutely terrible. So to compare yourself and then use that word and then to make it seem like Black people are less than is crazy that we still have that type of racism going on with our school systems.
And I also do think the fact that these students are so comfortable using the most derogatory term against Black people, there is no other term. They're using the term that's the most hurtful to us, and casually and constantly to our athletes is very damaging to people's mental health.
Specifically because in sports, everyone's supposed to have an equal and fair playing ground, but to attribute someone else's lack of success or success specifically to their racial background just really diminishes their individuality.
Absolutely. Just being a minority in sports as it is hard enough, but then to be forced into a group when you're trying to make a name for yourself individually is just, it's a whole nother level of just defeating.
Okay. The next one.
At a game 2 years ago, they made monkey noises at the volleyball team, an EHS boys volleyball player.
Yeah, that one, that can mess with somebody's mind. Like if you hear that, that's very offensive.
Absolutely.
So imagine if you're playing a game and you just hear that makes you want to stop playing actually, because that just messes with your mental mind, your mental mindset. So things like that, it drives people down.
It can it can mess up the performance, especially for people who are trying to get scouted for college and who are trying to actually go further in a sport and take their sport very seriously. Hearing these kind of demeaning things while they're trying to have their best performance can really knock down somebody and the athlete that is playing.
Especially, sorry. The implications that are made by it just itself. I mean, it's making monkey noises at a group of people is basically just insinuating that they're the same worth of like an animal, and
Yeah.
that just means that any response that comes back from it only perpetuates that. So they're just stuck to ignore it or have to just work past it, while the other team is just encouraged by how defeated and confused they are. Honestly, because what do you do to respond to that in an equal way? That's where management has to take a bigger responsibility. They need to step in, and I don't think we're seeing enough of that, especially in our school system.
That's so true, and like what you were saying before about how it can mess with your mental health. I feel like people who do things like this, they know that the effects of that. They do that for a reason. They know it can affect your performance. They know that it's gonna bring you down, like you're not gonna perform at your best level because it's affecting your mental health. So they do that for a reason.
And a lot of the students who do this, they don't think of it as anything deep. They do it as a game or they do it as something fun just with their friends. They don't realize that they're affecting real people's lives, and even if they do, they don't care, and that is a major problem.
And as Aman was saying, just the implication of the monkey noises, knowing the history behind it, where Black people were constantly called monkeys as to take them away from their human aspect and as to make them less than human, to compare them to animals. And for people to know that history and then still choose to do that as a joke, is it even a joke at that point? Like, to be at a volleyball game and think that that is the proper way to react to another school is absolutely crazy. And knowing that that wouldn't be the reaction you would get at a different school.
Exactly. And that's where like their morals come to play, and the administration and the people who are supposed to be guiding these kids in school. That's where, if they're doing their job correctly, or if they even care at all, or if the problem also lies with them, that's also a bigger issue. The next one.
At the beginning of the 2021 volleyball season, at one of our first scrimmages, we had a referee tell our players that they couldn't wear beads in their hair and that it was against the rules. We complained about it because we had never heard that rule before, nor had we ever been told that previously. Then, at our scrimmage at another school, that same referee had printed out a rule sheet and gave it to our team, and I'm pretty sure he gave it to another team as well. But he didn't give a sheet to many other schools except us.
So I think what's implied here is that the predominantly either white or less minority schools, like the ones that had more minorities and more people of color representation, were the ones that were given the rule sheets based on this rule, as compared to the other ones who were stereotypically or historically known for not having that. And I think not only is there an issue with the sense that, first off, the people at these predominantly, white or predominantly, less minority representation schools, they're not getting the same representation as anyone else, right? So that's an issue in of itself. But then the other part you have to look at here is that the rest of the people are being treated differently just for a different style, a different hair type, and that doesn't affect playing at all. So then what is the purpose?
Yeah, and it's something that's a part of their culture. So how are you going to tell someone that they can't represent their culture in the way they want to? It's not interfering with anything.
Absolutely.
It's not like it was interfering with the game at all. Like, your hair doesn't really interfere whether you win or lose. It's your play, your physical play. So like stuff like that, it's honestly unnecessary in a way.
And if they were to tie it back and put it out of the way, that's not necessarily causing an issue to anything. It's not like the players were not doing the proper things they needed to in order to perform properly. It's the fact that they're from a predominantly minority school, and these are the hairstyles that they normally wear, that they decided to give them these rules, which is not ethical at all.
Another thing is that there's like a really unequal balance of power here, because the other examples were being told from were being directed by students or other teenagers, but this scenario was being directed by a referee who has much more power than the players in the field. And if they're enabling this kind of behavior and at the same time establishing these kinds of expectations that are really unfair and unequal, then that really goes to show that there's a larger power at play here.
Absolutely, I completely agree with you. And I also just wanted to mention that there's really no difference. I mean, like if you look at, for example, people I know in my sport itself, cross country, they'll wear bows in their hairs, they'll wear all sorts of stuff, silly dye. And then you look at beads here, and that apparently is against the rules. And I wonder what the preface to that was. So when you look at the origin of these rules itself, I mean, there clearly had to have been someone who brought this up. This isn't just something that society said as a whole was like against the rules. Someone had to have done it first and then called it wrong. And I feel like the issue that the system is perpetuating this and has not abolished these rules is just a bigger problem in of itself. I mean, I don't understand what it has to do with the players' ability to play or what the opposition or the other team is going to be going through.
I think another very important thing to note is that everyone who has worn beads or who wears beads now knows that when you're playing a sport, you're not just going to leave your hair down because you run the risk of it getting in your face, you run the risk of it distracting you. So the hair is going to be put up anyways. So like any other ponytail, any other bun, how is that affecting a player? How is it affecting the team? How is it affecting the other team? It's not. So to put this regulation on it as if it's going to affect the game is absolutely just bizarre.
Absolutely.
Okay, and now on to our final response.
So I'll just go ahead and clarify that this one was actually one that I wrote. And I was told that I was not equal to other athletes due to my race. As I am Indian, throughout my entire athletic career, I've been stereotyped and not respected numerous times unless I performed well. Certain things that are repeatedly said are, shouldn't you be studying right now? I didn't know you people were into sports, or even called worse things, such as being a terrorist. And I just want to start off by saying I feel like as a minority, and I know that my fellow athletes can agree, that if we do not meet the standard of near perfection, we are not given equal representation. It's an unfortunate side effect of the sport, and unless we are truly one of the best of the best, we are not going to be given that same attention that our counterparts are. And I feel like that is a real big issue, especially in some predominantly white sports where you don't see a lot of people of color playing in. So I did want to bring attention to that. I would like to hear what you guys have to say about it.
Yeah, oftentimes, even if you as a minority perform well, they often attribute your success to you being a minority instead of you putting in the hard work and driving yourself and your passions in that sport. So there's there's multiple ways to really diminish your individuality and your own sense of identity here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is my first time actually hearing that. So things like this entire scenario right here, this whole entire situation, it's really unacceptable because why does race have to play a factor in your success or where you rank or who you are? Like, you should be judged off of how you treat people and your own personality, not just how you look, the color of your skin. Like, it has to be it has to be equal,
Absolutely.
It can't just be a certain way for one race and not a certain way for another. It has to be equal for it to be equality.
And for us to get anywhere and progress. Okay, so now we want to talk about the solution to these problems and things that should happen for those who say these racist things. They shouldn't just be able to get away with it, and they shouldn't be able to continuously say it and make a mockery of it and think that that's okay. So what kind of solutions do you guys think that should be going on?
Well, for starters, they should be monitoring people a lot better than they are because this stuff just slides and like there's nobody there to really put anybody in check, anybody in place. It just happens and everybody's cool with it. It's like,
Absolutely. And to kind of add on to what you were saying, I mean, we'll see it on social media all the time. We'll see someone get flamed for it online, but then they'll go into school and everyone's either buddy-buddy with them or they're just not acknowledging it at all. And then when you look at the people in charge, the teachers, the guidance counselors, just anyone who is in a position of power, not only do they not know about the issue, but if they do know about the issue, they simply say it is outside of school, and therefore, unless it takes precedent in school, and affects someone else's well-being, then we cannot do anything about it. But it clearly is, and that's the issue.
I think that the people who are in charge, like the coaches, the referees, they should get specific training on how to handle these racial issues, because a lot of the times they see these things happen, but they're not necessarily sure what lines to cross and what boundaries they should stay in order to handle this. So I think that having set rules and set guidelines on how to effectively handle this issue is one of the best things that we can do.
The other thing to be noted is that with a lot of these examples, you will see that it's not other players who are saying this, but it's the people who are coming to watch the games. So if we could set into place some sort of policy where if you're calling people slurs or if you're stereotyping people, if you're telling that they aren't good because they're this race, that there should be some sort of eviction with the games. Because we don't need people who aren't contributing anything to the game to be inside during racial slurs with people. So definitely monitoring, as you stated, as well as just harsher consequences.
I also do believe that the players themselves should also have a space where they can comfortably report these incidents and actually receive feedback quickly and consequences for these people. I think that if you are reporting an incident, a lot of the times it just gets pushed on the back burner and not a lot of people see it. So I think that us having a quick response to these and them just not ignoring it and having them continue over and over again would be a great solution.
Absolutely. I also do feel that one area of policy, especially when it comes to discrimination, that is always overlooked has just been this issue. I mean, the race issue has been one that our county has kind of just tossed to the side or tried to like almost postpone in a sense. As in they hope that we as students can collectively just get there on our own, but the whole purpose of school is to learn, right? And we need that help. So I feel like it's really necessary that they do take a position in here. And I know they'll always say there's some sort of political or red flags and stuff like that, but they do need to take a more active role in the development of students, because if they do not learn from them, they're going to learn from the exact people we don't want them to. They'll always hear the negative influences louder than the better ones. So I do think it's important that we implement that into our school as well, in a way that the students can hear that, take it in, and have an open, honest discussion about not only their experience, but the ones of the people that feel that they can say these things. Because it's important that we actually work to better, the people in the school.
Yeah. And I think that this is also where consequences come into play. I think that suspension from sports should be something that these players receive, and I think that suspensions or just consequences in general, like that should go on their record, because these are hurting other students, and these things are very serious matters and very serious words that are being said. And the reason why they can continue to do these things is because there are no consequences for them. So I believe that suspensions and actual school implied, I don't know what to say, but
Punishment.
just punishment should be given to them.
Kind of adding on to that, I feel like they don't, as far as our school system goes itself, there's not a sort of punishment in place unless it goes all the way down to a physical altercation. And for it to get to that point is truly appalling. It's almost as if we truly are animals in that sense. It takes us getting aggravated to the point that we have to take matters into our own hands for us to finally get anything done. And when that happens, we're punished for it. So I feel like they need to actively take a better role in that.
And that is why a lot of athletes don't end up getting like the justice they deserve, because when these things happen to them, they don't want to do anything that will prove what these schools are saying right. They don't want them to think that they were right all along about the kind of person they are and think that their judge of character about them was correct when it is not. Their feelings were hurt, and that's why they responded in such a way. And I think that, like you said, like physical altercation shouldn't be the only reason why there are consequences. It should be consequences on both sides.
I also would like to propose that there should be more communication between like officials, whether it be coaches, referees, and administrators. Because in the story with the referee who established the rule of no beads on the volleyball court or the volleyball game, that rule was like made on the day of the game with no prior communication or rationale whatsoever as to why that rule had to be established. And there should definitely be more communication between, people who are administrating these games on why these things are happening and the consequences or the repercussions on, making these unjust rules as well.
I agree. So I would like to thank all of our members who joined this roundtable discussion with us today. And I also want to thank those who are watching our video. This conversation and bringing awareness is always the first step and a great step, but action also needs to be taken so that these things do not continue. Thank you.